That may be what the legislature's got to do this week. Brent Powell joins us. He is representative for District 59, Rankin County. He's chair of the House Energy Committee. Brent, appreciate you coming in this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Richard.
Absolutely. Let's just start with the biggest story that's out there. That's the special session that we are told is happening this week. Have you gotten a formal invitation yet or instruction on when you are supposed to be at the Capitol?
I haven't gotten the formal, but Speaker texted us last week, said we're going to go in tomorrow at 11 a.m.
Okay, 11 a.m. tomorrow. So Governor said middle of the week, and Wednesday qualifies as middle of the week. Speaker White was on with us last week, and he said that the deal was largely done in terms of the budget, but some of those spending pieces didn't look like there was going to be an agreement to get that the Senate wasn't just going to budge on that. What can you tell us about what kind of the process has been like post-legislative session getting to this point where the special session's going on?
Well, I'll give you my perspective. I'm not on appropriations, so I hadn't been involved in those negotiations with them. But from what I understand, the budget was basically done before we left.
Yeah.
It was special projects that we were arguing about. And from my understanding, the Senate wanted to do some rather large special projects but not give anything to the local counties and municipalities. And our position was either we're going to do all special projects or we're going to do none.
Yeah.
From what I understand, and like I said, he's supposed to email us today the budget. I haven't seen it yet. Of course, it's 8 in the morning. So, but from my understanding, I don't think there's going to be any special projects in the budget this year.
How big a deal is that for you and for your colleagues to have to go back to your constituents and say, sorry, I know this project needed to be done, but we're not doing it this year?
It's not terrible. It's not great. Let's just be honest. I mean, because me being on the reservoir, me and Senator Harkins, we've set up, say, like a dredging fund. So we're able to put a little bit of money in that to keep the reservoir dredged. And stuff like that. So it's not, for me, it's not terrible. For a lot of people, it's not going to be good. You've got a lot of senators that are running because of redistricting. We've got a few representatives running. So going back to their districts and saying, hey, we got nothing for you, that's not going to help the incumbents coming, And that sounds terrible, but that's just the way it works. I mean,
sure,
we've got the budget every year. We've got CapEx funds. That's extra money. So we want to be able to bring it back to our districts on what our districts need, and the fact you can't do it, that's not really that good.
Well, and one of the things that I wondered, and I understand, the politics of this and the political game, if you will, where the Senate's saying we want to do it this way, and the House is saying no, we're either going to do everything or we're not going to do anything. But I feel like those senators need to, in the same way that representatives need to be able to go back to their districts and say, hey, this is the money that we're bringing home for these projects, and, we worked really hard to get this for you. I feel like senators need to be able to say the exact same thing when they go back to their home districts, and I don't know how they're going to be able to do that.
I feel the same way, and I've talked to a senator, a week or two ago. He the same way. I mean, it's not all senators are appreciative of the fact that they're holding tight on this no special funds stuff. So I agree that if we're going to do it, let's do it. If we're not going to do it, let's not do it. There's no reason to be arguing about all this mess. We should, back in February, we all knew what was going on. So why did we have to come into a special session? Of course, we saved the day, so it's not going to cost us that much money. But I agree. I mean, if we're going to do special funds, let's do special funds. It's the taxpayers' money. Let's give it back to the taxpayers. What are we holding on to it for?
Say what you just said again. There was 1 day left that was from the original legislative session, and
yes, we left on a Friday. As far as the House goes, we left on a Friday. So that was conference weekend. So you had Saturday and Sunday. We had those days left over. So in other words, we didn't get paid for those days, and so we have those set aside. This special session shouldn't take more than a day or two anyway. So it's technically not going to cost us that much more money for the special session. But there was no reason to have it. Speaker White came to the Senate and said very early in the session, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to wait to the last second to do this budget to where we're all voting for something on the Sunday that we have no idea what's in it. We're just having to trust the chairman, which we do trust the chairman, but we should be able to take a look at these things. And he came to him very early in the session and said, we're going to do this early. Here's what our budget proposal is. And he gave it to them very early in the session. Our appropriations chairman worked very diligently to get it done, handed it to them, but the Senate decided they wanted to wait till the last They wanted to wait till the last minute because that's what we traditionally do. We work all conference weekend till up until 8 o'clock at night, midnight, depending on what day it is, and then none of us have an idea of what's going on in this budget. So Speaker White said, no, we're not going to do this. We want to make sure everybody understands what's in this, and then we're going to vote on it.
There are naysayers wouldn't be the right word, but those that are skeptical that are saying, well, is this any different? Like they negotiated the budget without a lot of public light on it behind closed doors, and now it's being emailed to you and everybody else Tuesday morning. You're going to go into session on Wednesday morning. Is it any different than if it was negotiated during conference weekend, other than just more time has gone by?
Probably not, honestly.
Oh, jeez. I appreciate the candor.
Hey, I
really do.
I mean, we're going to get, like I said, he's supposed to email all of the representatives what the budget is today, which gives us a whole day to look at it, which, by the way, is a whole day more than we normally get to look at it. So, you might be able to find a mistake. You might be able to find something you don't like, but at least it's not 2 hours before you vote on something.
I thought there were some interesting comments that came from Robert Johnson and Derek Simmons, and they recognize that there's a supermajority and there's nothing that they can do about it, right? If Democrats want to hold up the budget, sorry, you can't do it. You don't have the votes. But they were frustrated that no Democrats had been involved at all in the budget process. Is that a reasonable concern, a reasonable criticism?
If you're on that side, I can see it. But if you back up 13, 14 years ago, the Republicans were doing it in the same position. It's just politics. I mean, that's just the way the game works. So, I mean, you're going to have majority Republican chairman, and they're controlling everything, and most of your chairmen are the ones that are doing everything as far as their committee works. So, you back up, like I said, 13, 14 years ago, and the Republicans were sitting there going, we can't do anything about this.
Yeah. Well, when we talked about it earlier this morning, that's kind of the point that I made. It's like, what difference does it really make one way or the other? But from an optics standpoint, it's like even if you can't dictate or change, maybe it would make sense to at least be involved in the process. Whereas they're saying, we get no idea what's in this budget bill, but maybe that's no different than you either. And you're going to see it this morning.
That's right. I mean, and you go back to the committees. I mean, your Democrats, they're not going to have, they can be vocal about stuff, but they're not changing any votes on anything. So, I mean, it's kind of the same way on the appropriations and the budget bill. They can be involved in the process, but what are they really doing?
Yeah.
And that sounds terrible, but I mean, that's just the way it works.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that front. Visiting with Brent Powell. He is chair of the House Energy Committee. And I'd like for us to talk a little bit about that, and we'll have to continue the conversation after the break. But when we talk about energy, I feel like that has been more in the news here in the state of Mississippi in recent months and the last couple of years than any time that I can remember. And it goes so hand in hand with the economic development projects that have been rolled out one after another by the governor and his staff and that entire economic development crew. Does it feel like being on the Energy Committee right now, chair of that committee, is a bigger deal and more important than it has been?
I think it's getting that way. And let me correct you. I'm chair of Public Utilities right now. I was energy a while back, but they're hand in hand in the Senate. They're combined in the Senate. But yes, as far as and I can speak to you on Public Utilities part of it. The energy part of it, as far as the electricity, is what we're really running into. Entergy, the company, is doing a really good job as far as building new power plants and keeping ahead of it. But yes, it's fixing to be a big deal as far as these data centers go.
Thank you for the correction. And yes, certainly that public utilities and energy have to work together a lot. Let's talk a little bit more about the public utility side and some of the challenges that our municipalities are facing and what we're doing to get ready for that. We'll continue the conversation with Brent Powell He represents District 59 in Rankin County in the House of Representatives. Quick timeout. We've got more with you coming up. It's Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi. Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk, Mississippi. Today, the 27th of May. Representative Brent Powell is my guest, District 59. That's Rankin County. He joins us. Lance was telling me during the break earlier, he said he was looking at district lines, and he said your district goes way out in the middle of the reservoir.
I think I have more water than I do land in my district.
If you can figure out a way to get alligators to vote, you'll be in good shape.
Well, I got a bunch of them behind my house, so, yeah.
There you go. You make friends with those guys, or you just try and steer clear?
They don't really bother me too bad. The biggest problem is if like yesterday I was fishing, so I caught a few catfish, so I was cleaning them, so I try not to throw the carcasses near them so they don't keep coming back. But they don't really bother you too bad out there.
I guess that's how if you've got a neighbor problem, then you go throw the catfish carcasses behind the neighbor's house and get them there.
There you go. Let them crawl up in their yard instead of mine.
High-level overview. Public utilities. When we think about representatives, we think about, okay, they are serving their particular district. But when you get into committees, you're talking about the good of the overall state and either crafting or enacting legislation. And public utilities, you're talking about big power companies, cooperatives, city-run entities. There are a lot of different shapes and sizes within that public utilities realm. So in terms of the way you and your colleagues on that committee approach things, legislation and problem solving, what's kind of the modus operandi for you?
Well, I try to be fair to everybody, from the big companies to the smaller companies, from the co-ops to the to Entergy to C Spire to anybody. I try to be as middle of the road as I can. In other words, my approach is, who's for it, who's against it, and let's try and find common ground in the middle. So that's kind of the way it is on that. From broadband to Entergy, for power, whatever. That's kind of the way I approach things. So,
is your primary focus right now on power itself, or is it more on this broadband fiber infrastructure, which for the last 4 or 5 years has been like, you can't go to a community in Mississippi and not see those trucks that are out, either running lines or burying lines or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, right now, I would say the broadband's kind of taking care of itself. We had the BEAD office who's taking care of all the broadband money from the federal government. They're trying to roll out as much as they can, working with the co-ops that decided to do fiber. And then you got your AT&Ts, your C Spire, your Comcast. So that's kind of taking care of itself. We try to make sure that one company's not rolling over anybody more than that. But I feel like the next stage is going to be the power, as far as the Amazon Center. We got the one that came here, or the two that came here. We got the one in Meridian, and I think we're going to see some more rollout here pretty soon. So,
we've talked with different people, and I don't know that we've dived into the deep end completely with the nuclear power conversation, but with the executive order that President Trump put in place just last week, that's focused more than anything on rolling back some regulation. Are we about to see nuclear power construction just take off, or is this a different thing that we're headed toward?
I think you're going to start seeing more people looking at it. I know the Grand Gulf site has the ability to expand. I think they've got another site that they can expand on. So that's probably the closest that we have to something like that. We did a hearing last year, or Joe Carter in the Senate did a hearing on the modular reactors, which are the small site. And from what I'm understanding, they're probably 10 or 12 years actually away from rolling out. But I think that's what you're going to see, is these small modular reactors coming online. But it's going to be a few years down the road. But it's great that he did the executive order, that maybe it'll speed this stuff up, and maybe we can get it a little bit faster than what we're looking at.
Yeah, and I'm really, really fascinated by the modular reactors that you're talking about. And I don't know if those are more going to be designed for, business entities, you mentioned Amazon, something like that, where they're going to have an on-site smaller modular reactor that's capable of powering all that they need, or if we're talking like micro reactors that you could theoretically install at your home to run your home's power. It's really fascinating technology.
I agree. In talking with some, and it's funny, they were doing the hearing, and I was talking with some industry guys in the back. We wasn't really paying attention, but the modulars, it sounds like they're going to be really great for these data centers or big eat up, power industry or businesses, maybe small cities. But the another real good thing about it is, say if another Katrina happens, you got 2 or 3 of these that you can roll down there and start powering things up before you get the power plants back on. So they're kind of a neat little thing. I'd love to see some of them start coming online, but like I said, it sounds like it's going to be a few years down the road.
Is there a scenario where those could potentially act in conjunction with kind of the existing grid?
I think they could tie in just like wind and solar can tie into the regular grid. I think there's an opportunity for that. I'm not 100% because that's not my field of business, but I think all of that can kind of tie in. In other words, say the Amazon site here gets a reactor, or the modular reactor. I think if they're not using it at all, I don't know why it couldn't fall back into the grid.
Yeah. I know Public Service Commission kind of takes the lead on some local issues that are happening. Marshall County is one that has been in the news with, water and power issues that they've had, and that's something that people are continuing to look at. I'm curious, though, is Marshall County an island? Like, are they an entity of one that is dealing with this, and it just happens to be the most publicized, or are there other parts of the state where infrastructure is old and failing, leadership has not invested as they needed to maintain, and this is something that could be more common than just what we're seeing in Marshall County?
They're definitely the poster child for that. I have not heard of any other systems as bad as that one is. We're talking about Holly Springs, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
We individually had to do a bill to try and take that thing over with and get it done. And Public Service Commission definitely helped. But they're kind of an island of their own. There are other systems that should take over. The bigger problem right now is not so much the power as the rural water situations. And you're running into areas of rural water that the boards are primarily people in that area, and they don't want to raise their rates on their own friends, but they're not taking that any of the money and reinvesting back into the systems. So we're starting to see rural water areas starting to fail like this.
Kind of back to where we started with the special projects money that is not going to be allocated, and kind of tying this into your committee. So I live in Oxford, and Oxford has seen incredible growth over the last 20 years. I had somebody tell me that, when students are in session, the number of heads on pillows in Lafayette County on a given night is, it's right at 100,000. And that's, double what it was 2 decades ago. From an infrastructure standpoint, and Oxford's not alone. We're seeing college towns grow, whether you're talking about Starkville or Hattiesburg. We've seen coast towns that are bursting at the seams. Nobody necessarily had infrastructure 20, 30, 50 years ago designed for the volume of people, the volume of business that's happening in some of these communities. How much concern is there about the grid, if we're talking about power, but more like public utilities like water and sewer and road systems, which I know is not necessarily public utilities, as these places continue to grow? Because that's not a sexy way to spend money.
No, and the big thing, and y'all have got a great mayor, Robin's great, but you've got to be able to, as your system starts building, you've got to be able to, or you have to take that money and put it back into the systems. In other words, say for instance, Oxford, as the people are paying their utility bills or water, electricity, or whatever, those companies need to reinvest and maintain those systems for the growth. And as long as they're doing that, you shouldn't have any issues. It's when they're not, for instance, Holly Springs or some of these rural water associations like I was telling you about, when they don't do that, then you run into the catastrophic problems that they're having.
So if the maintenance and construction is happening incrementally, then that puts you in a place where you continue to be okay. You just don't want to have to go in and replace everything all at once.
Sure. And I wouldn't even say, excuse me, I wouldn't even say maintenance. I would say you number one, you got to maintain it, but you got to be able to start putting money in for growth. In other words, build your system. Don't just maintain it. And a lot of these places, they're just maintaining and they're not trying to build their system. And as long as you're keeping ahead of the curve, you shouldn't have any issues.
Representative Brent Powell, District 59, Rankin County. Really appreciate you coming by. Enjoyed the conversation, and hope you guys are in and out and successful this week in the special session, and then turn all the attention to next year.
I hope you're right.
Thanks so much for coming by.
Thank you, sir.
Mornings with Richard Cross, Super Talk Mississippi. JT Mitchell is up next. We'll take a look at some of the news headlines, what he's hearing about the special session, and a little bit more on what the Super Talk Mississippi news team is focused on this week. Half an hour left with you on this Tuesday morning. Thanks for joining us on MRC.